Let's talk a bit about the First Amendment, freedoms of speech, publication, assembly. There's a well-known Supreme Court case, Brandenburg v. Ohio, which establishes a certain test to ensure that the government is constrained in any effort that may be made to punish speech. And the impulse to censorship is something that can emerge from time to time across the ideological and political spectrum, particularly in times of great controversy or in times of national security crisis. Can you please walk the committee and the broader public watching now from all across the country through that decision and how you will approach these vital protections for speech, publication, and assembly, should you be confirmed?
Thank you, Senator. Freedom of speech, publication, assembly is in the First Amendment of the Constitution. It is a core foundational protection against censorship. It is important in our constitutional scheme that people be allowed to express themselves, that ideas be exchanged. That is the groundwork for a vigorous and vital democracy. There are many tests, many cases in the Supreme Court's jurisprudence that discuss various disputes about circumstances in which the government can restrain or regulate speech. And that decision establishes to a certain extent that if there is speech that is an incitement to violence, that's one circumstance in which the government might be able to prevent it. But other than that, short of that, free speech is supposed to be allowed to happen. And there are, again, various tests and circumstances that the court has applied in deciding whether the government can regulate the content, place, and manner of speech. But the general principle is that our democracy thrives because the government is restrained and cannot censor its citizens.
I think in the same spirit of thanks with which I opened these questions, I also want to just take a moment and recognize the members of the press who are here, the reporters and photographers who ensure that these proceedings are truly accessible to the public, and ask you to describe your approach to press freedom. The question of prior restraint has been litigated. A famous case in the context of the Pentagon Papers in the latter years of the Vietnam War. I believe for all of us on this committee, we recognize the vital role of press freedom in ensuring the free exchange of ideas, access to truth and debate in our democracy. How will you approach cases that implicate press freedom?
Thank you, Senator. This is another area in which there is well-established case law that supports the freedom of the press to be able to write and report. There is a general obligation of truth in terms of the press, but also a recognition that sometimes there may be things that get published that aren't exactly accurate. And so the court in New York Times versus Sullivan determined a higher standard of liability for press. Things that are put out in the press have to be knowingly false. There's an actual malice test because the court was balancing concerns about libel, people claiming that they have been misrepresented in the press, with the need to allow the press to do their job. The overall understanding is that press freedom again, is one of the First Amendment freedoms that are undergird our democracy.
Something